Imagine you're a fisherman on the island of Sumbawa in April 1815. For days, the ground has trembled, a low growl echoing from Mount Tambora, a peak you have always known as a gentle, green giant. Suddenly, the growl becomes a world-shattering roar. You look up to see the mountain's peak disintegrate in a column of fire and black smoke that punches miles into the sky, blotting out the sun at midday. It is not just an eruption. It is the loudest sound in recorded history, an explosion so violent it is heard over 1,000 miles away. The world is plunged into absolute darkness, not for an hour, but for days. A rain of ash and pumice, thick as mud, buries villages, collapses homes, and suffocates everything that lives. You and your family run for the coast, but the sea itself has turned against you, whipped into a frenzy of tsunamis that smash your boats to splinters. You don't know the word volcano in the way we do. You don't understand stratospheric injection or ash clouds. To you, this is not a geological event. It is the apocalypse. The gods have torn the sky open and are unmaking the world. You are witnessing the birth of a global killer, a silent, invisible poison that will soon wrap its cold fingers around the entire planet. But as you choke on the sulfurous air, your only thought is survival, unaware that your island's death rattle has just fired the starting gun on a catastrophe that will starve Europe, reshape America, and give birth to monsters. Weeks turn into months. The immediate horror on Sumbawa is over. Its 70,000 dead, a mere footnote to a story the world does not yet know it is a part of. High in the stratosphere, an invisible ghost begins its journey. 100 million tons of sulfur dioxide aerosol, blasted 25 miles high, form a delicate, shimmering veil around the planet. In London, people gaze in wonder at the sunsets. They are breathtaking, a spectacle of lurid yellows, blazing oranges, and deep, bruised purples that linger for hours. The artist J.M.W. Turner furiously sketches the sky, trying to capture the new, impossible colors, believing he is witnessing a divine revelation in light. No one connects these beautiful, terrible sunsets to the distant rumble that British officers in Sumatra mistook for cannon fire. They are admiring the wrapping paper on a gift of global starvation. This aerosol veil is a mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space. The planet's thermostat is being slowly, inexorably turned down. Each spectacular sunset is a sign that less energy is reaching the Earth's surface, a portent of the coming cold. It is a slow, silent, and beautiful killer, painting the sky with the colors of doom while humanity below remains blissfully unaware of the chill creeping into the bones of the world. They are living the quiet moments before the storm, a global winter that no one can see coming. By the spring of 1816, the beauty has turned to horror. In Switzerland, Germany, and Ireland, the sun is a pale, sickly disk in a perpetually gray sky. The cold that began as a novelty has become a relentless siege. It snows in May. The rains that come are freezing, turning fields into quagmires of mud and rotting seed. The grain harvest, the very foundation of life, fails completely. This is not just a bad year. It is a biblical famine. People strip the bark from trees and boil weeds for sustenance. Families are found frozen in their homes, their fireplaces long cold. In cities, the price of bread explodes, leading to desperate riots. Mobs storm bakeries, their faces gaunt with hunger, fighting over scraps of flour. Governments, having just survived the Napoleonic Wars, have no reserves and no answers. They blame hoarders, they blame speculators, but they cannot blame a mountain on the other side of the world they've never heard of. The social fabric tears. Neighbors steal from neighbors. Stories spread of desperate people eating cats, rats, and even their own seed grain, a final, hopeless act. The crisis is so profound it feels like a divine punishment, a curse laid upon the land. They pray for sun, for warmth, for an end to the endless, bone-chilling damp, but the sky just weeps a cold, gray rain. The year without a summer has truly begun. Across the Atlantic, in New England, the year is known as 1800 froze to death. On June 6th, a foot of snow buries the newly planted crops in Vermont. The frost returns in July and again in August. Farmers watch in disbelief as their corn, the staple of their existence, is killed on the stalk, turning black and limp. The land, which had always provided, has become a frozen, barren traitor. Diaries from the time are filled with bewilderment and fear. Is this the beginning of a new ice age? Has God abandoned America? The economic impact is devastating. Farmers who cannot grow food cannot pay their debts. They lose their land, their homes, their entire future. For thousands, there is only one solution: leave. This single, freakish year of cold triggers one of the great migrations in American history. Families pack their meager belongings into wagons, turn their backs on the frozen hills of New England, and head west towards the promise of the Ohio Valley. They are climate refugees, fleeing not war or persecution, but a sky that is turned against them. They are seeking a place where the sun still shines, unaware that they are fleeing the shadow of a mountain half a world away. This exodus will reshape the American frontier, populating new states and pushing the nation westward, all because of an atmospheric veil they could neither see nor comprehend. On the shores of Lake Geneva, the rain never stops. The summer of 1816 is a dreary, claustrophobic affair of perpetual twilight and chilling damp. Trapped inside the Villa Diodati are a group of young, brilliant, and restless English writers: Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, his 18-year-old future wife Mary, and Byron's physician, John Polidori. Their holiday has become a prison. Staring out at the churning, gray lake and the lightning that cracks over the mountains, Byron challenges his friends to a contest. Who can write the best ghost story? The oppressive gloom, the electric atmosphere, and their conversations about galvanism and reanimation plant a seed in Mary Shelley's mind. She has a waking nightmare, a terrifying vision of a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. From this volcanic gloom, Frankenstein is born. The creature is a perfect metaphor for the times, an unnatural creation, rejected by its creator and feared by a world that cannot understand it, a consequence of ambition that overreaches the bounds of nature. In the same house, inspired by Byron's own brooding persona, Polidori writes The Vampire, creating the template for the aristocratic, seductive vampire that will haunt literature forever. Two of history's most enduring monsters are conceived in this one haunted summer, direct children of Tamboura's global chill, born from the boredom, fear, and creative genius ignited by a world gone wrong. The cold from Tamboura's veil does more than just freeze crops. It fundamentally alters global weather patterns. In India, the 1816 summer monsoon, a life-giving deluge that billions depend on, fails. The season is unusually dry, and then, when the rains finally come, they are late and weak. This climatic disruption creates the perfect breeding ground for a biological monster. In the stagnant, warm waters of the Ganges Delta, a localized strain of cholera bacteria, Vibrio cholerae, mutates. Under the stress of the altered environment, it evolves into a new, far more virulent and deadly form. Previously a regional nuisance, this new strain is a killer on an unprecedented scale. It spreads through contaminated water, first devastating Bengal, then hitching a ride with British troops and trade ships. From India, it begins a slow, inexorable march across the globe, reaching Russia by 1830 and Europe and North America by 1831. It becomes the first truly global pandemic, killing millions over the next century in wave after wave of terror. People who had survived the famine of 1816 would be struck down by a disease whose origins could be traced back to the same event. They saw it as a divine plague, a miasma, a sickness carried on the air. They never knew it was the long, deadly echo of a volcanic eruption, a microscopic killer born from a planetary fever that had turned into a chill. In an age before science could provide answers, humanity did what it always does in the face of incomprehensible disaster. It looked for someone to blame. The cold, the failed harvests, the incessant rain. It had to be the work of a malevolent force. In Europe, old superstitions flared to life. Processions of penitents marched through towns, whipping themselves and praying for God's forgiveness. Others looked for more earthly culprits. Whispers turned to accusations, and in some isolated communities, the ancient horror of witch hunts was revived. Old women who lived alone, those who were different, were blamed for blighting the crops or souring the sky. In America, the blame was more modern, but no less misguided. Some prominent thinkers seriously proposed that Benjamin Franklin's recent invention, the lightning rod, was the cause. They argued that by drawing electricity from the sky, the rods had somehow disrupted the weather's natural balance. Newspapers printed serious debates about whether the rods should be torn down to appease nature. Others blamed sunspots, a theory that gained traction because astronomers had noted a lack of them. No one, not a single scientist, farmer, or priest, looked at a map and drew a line from the snow in Vermont to the famines in Switzerland to a volcanic island in Indonesia. The truth was too vast, too global, too random for the 19th century mind to grasp. It was easier to blame a witch than a volcano. The story of unintended consequences takes another dark turn in the mountains of Yunnan province, China. Here, as in the rest of the world, Tambora's chill devastates traditional agriculture. The rice paddies, which require immense sun and stable water, fail catastrophically. The ensuing famine pushes peasant farmers to the brink of annihilation. They need a crop that can survive the cold, the damp, and the weak sun. They need a cash crop that can pay for food imports. They find it in the opium poppy. The poppy is hardy, resilient, and incredibly profitable. Forced by climatic desperation, farmers across southern China rip out their failed rice paddies and replace them with fields of blooming poppies. This massive shift in agriculture, born from the volcanic winter, dramatically increases the supply of Chinese opium. Within a generation, this glut of domestic production, combined with British imports, fuels a crisis of addiction that will hollow out Chinese society. It sets the stage for one of history's most shameful conflicts, the Opium Wars. The British merchants who would later profit from this trade, and the Qing emperors who would try to stop it, were all unwitting actors in a drama that began with a geological explosion thousands of miles away. A mountain's tantrum in 1815 directly sowed the seeds of an empire's downfall 25 years later. Not all of Tambora's children were monsters. In the famine-stricken city of Mannheim, Germany, a civil servant and inventor named Baron Karl von Drais watched the unfolding disaster with a practical eye. The failure of the grain harvest had a devastating ripple effect. The price of oats skyrocketed. Horses, the primary mode of transportation for millennia, became prohibitively expensive to feed. Many were simply slaughtered for meat. The world, Drais realized, needed a new form of personal transport, one that didn't rely on hungry animals. In 1817, driven by this transport crisis, he unveiled his invention, the loft machine, or running machine. It was a simple, two-wheeled wooden frame with a steerable front wheel that a rider would straddle and propel with their feet. It was awkward and ungainly, mocked by many, but it was a revolution. It was the world's first bicycle, the direct ancestor of the vehicle that would one day empower women, mobilize workers, and transform cities. This incredible leap in mechanical engineering, a key step towards a world not solely powered by muscle, was not born in a moment of idle inspiration. It was an act of desperation, a direct response to the famine and transport collapse caused by Tambora. The volcano that starved the horses gave humanity the bicycle, a brilliant, unintended consequence of a global catastrophe. For decades, the year without a summer remained a chilling mystery, a collection of disconnected tragedies. The truth lay hidden in plain sight. In Turner's paintings, in Mary Shelley's novel, in geological strata, and in the ice cores of Greenland. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists, armed with new tools and a global perspective, finally pieced the puzzle together. By analyzing volcanic ash trapped in polar ice, They could date major eruptions with pinpoint accuracy. A massive spike in sulfates in the 1815 to 1816 layer was the smoking gun. They connected this data to the obscure historical accounts of Tambara's explosion and then, finally, to the vast web of climate data and historical record from around the world. The mystery was solved. It wasn't a curse or witches or sunspots. It was geology. It was chemistry. It was a single, violent event that demonstrated the terrifying, interconnected fragility of human civilization. The story of Tambora is a profound lesson. It reminds us that our world is a single, complex system where an event on one side of the planet can bring another to its knees. The people of 1816 lived and died inside a catastrophe they couldn't comprehend. We now understand the cause, but the lesson remains more relevant than ever. Their story whispers to us from the past, a cold, volcanic wind warning that we are all, always, living in the shadow of the next Tambora.